Hello and welcome to Early Childhood Ireland's podcast, which features interviews and discussions on all issues relating to high quality in the early years and school age care sector. In our episodes, we have a range of speakers who are leaders in the areas that matter to Early Childhood Ireland members. This podcast series is proudly supported by Aricus Insurance. Aricus offer a comprehensive range of cover at discounted premiums for both business and personal insurance products. So visit www.aricus.ie for more information. In this series of Early Childhood Ireland's podcast, we're focusing on outdoor play. We know that outdoor play is a vital environment for children to develop so many motor skills and fundamental movement skills. In the outdoors, children can challenge themselves and they can take risks that they cannot do inside. But while having a large outdoor space is a great asset, the key thing really is how often children can access the space, how long they can spend there, and most importantly, what children can do in the outdoor space. Lee Herlihy's setting, Horizons Montessori, is located in Cork City, and her outdoor space is a fairly typical urban garden size. I'm delighted Lee is joining me today to tell us about her approach to outdoor play and learning. She opened Horizons in the year 2000. At that time, in practice, there was little enough emphasis on outdoor play, but over the years, so much has transformed in terms of access and affordances. So, Lee, you're really welcome on the podcast today to tell us about your approach to outdoor play.
Thanks, Maura. Delighted to be here.
So maybe to start, can you tell us a little bit about the 23 years that Horizons has been in operation and how your practice has evolved over that time and the type of setting you have and so on?
Absolutely. So 23 years is a long time, but it has gone by in a blink as well. So so like I suppose you said there, we opened in 2000 and it was a very different environment, really, I suppose, about kind of what the focus was in early childhood. We opened initially with no outdoor area, even though we had access to one, we just didn't consider it. And then really, I suppose after our first year working with children, we realized, okay, look, we need to get out, we need space, we needed it for ourselves as well as educators. And that's when we put it in access to a very basic kind of outdoor area, paved area. We had the usual kind of bikes and trikes and chalk and things like that. But it was very much, we viewed it very much as kind of like an area that was kind of separate to our learning area. So indoors was the valuable area where all the learning and the teaching, probably I suppose I would use, took place. And outdoors was someplace we went to let them to run off steam and release energy, and then that we could go back in and the learning could recommence. So even now, as I say that, I look back and go, gosh, how far we've moved on since then. But
that approach wouldn't have been uncommon then. It has, a lot has changed over the years.
Absolutely, and I suppose we were very lucky, really, I suppose, in that we kind of participated in things like we were members of NCNA, we did the Centre of Excellence, we did the Shielded QAP on a number of occasions, and I suppose we really started reflecting then and kind of assessing our environments more and looking at the value and what we weren't, I suppose, taking advantage of, so what we weren't benefiting from that we had. So it really just kind of made us change our perspective really on outdoors. And that would have probably been kind of, mid 2000s, 2005, 2006, we really started using the outdoor area a lot more, bringing things from the indoors, outdoors, and just, I suppose, just expanding kind of our thoughts of it. But still, it would have been, I suppose, kind of a structured time a day. We would have still had, okay, look, we'll go outside between this time and this time, or after lunch or after story, we'd go out for a period of 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and then we'd be back in again. So it was very much something that was slotted in, into a schedule, really, I suppose, a scheduled time where children were brought out. We used the area and then we went back in. And as the weather would improve, we'd use a little bit more. We'd stay out there for longer during, warmer weather. But when the weather was inclement or anyway bad, we'd probably use it less as well. So,
and it would have been all the children going out with all the educators.
It would have been a scheduled, let's go, we'll all move outside. So from the outset, I suppose we did do a lot of reflecting and thinking about what we had there. So we tried to make it very organic. So we had a very small, we do have a very small area. We're surrounded on all sides by a supermarket, a main road, and another housing estate. So we have quite a small area really. So we had an unused piece of space in the back garden, and we said, okay, that really lends itself to something quieter and sensory. So we put in gravel and running water and mud, digging beds, things like that. And I suppose then in our outdoor area, we kept it very, very simple, just a paved area, sand and water. So again, it was quite basic, I suppose, but we started watching really how the children were using the area and what they wanted. So we toyed with the idea of going off and buying a big structure that we could, like a boat or something, or, a climbing frame. But like we noticed really, because we're an urban setting, we're very dependent. We don't have a lot of change. So if you're in an outdoor area, you've got the natural kind of changing of the seasons, you've got trees changing, the weather, the landscape changes. But if you're in an urban area, it kind of stays the same, like paving doesn't change, so we knew we wanted something that would change and adapt kind of the seasons. So rather than, investing in kind of solid structures that were just there and remain the same, that we would look at, okay, things like that were more movable and more, you could take in and add and remove from the environment. So things like blocks, tables, cable reels, tough tables, for building on. So we kind of, I suppose, rather than kind of having something that was fixed in place, we said, okay, we're going to have to be flexible about this, because we have to introduce the change ourselves. We have to introduce the variety ourselves, rather than, let's say, the environment doing so for us. So.
And your sessional service?
Yeah. So we have a morning session, and we've 33 children. So we over 2 rooms, and then we have an afternoon session again of 33 children. But I suppose in the last maybe 4 to 5 years, we use our outdoor area much more so now. So instead of considering ourselves having 2 classrooms, we consider ourselves, we have 4 spaces. So we have 4 environments, 2 of which happen to be indoor and 2 of which happen to be outdoor. And we use them interchangeably fully then throughout the sessions. Yeah. So it never feels like I was doing a viewing actually with the parents, and she said, how many children are here? And I said, oh, there's 33. And she went, what? And she couldn't believe it. And then she'd been 20 minutes in the service walking around from area to area. And she said, I thought you'd about 20, maybe 15. You couldn't feel that there was 33 children there. And because we were all so spread out over different spaces. So that's a nice feeling.
Absolutely. And that's, that gives children that sense of kind of ease and security. And, sometimes children can be overwhelmed inside. Yeah, spaces can be echoey, and that happens less outside.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's the beauty of it really, is because all of the spaces then have a different feeling. You might have a really boisterous jumping, climbing game in one area, and maybe down the back they're actually listening to birds, and another classroom is playing music, and another classroom they're jumping around and doing something. So all of the rooms have different kind of energies, I suppose, and it's about tapping into the energy of that area. So children are very much free then to kind of find a matching place that matches where they are right there at that moment in time. So that's really nice.
So you've kind of taken us through how your approach to outdoor play evolved over the years. Can you go back a little bit and tell us, why this happened? Why you came to see the outdoor as being more than the place that children let off steam in between their bouts of learning inside, if you like?
Yeah, it was a slow process, and it definitely wasn't something that we just woke up one morning and said, okay, no, we're going to value the outdoor play as much as we're going to value the indoor play. It wasn't even a conscious decision, really. It was something, I suppose, really just through our observations of the children and how calmer they were, number one, how individual children that maybe didn't do so well in an indoor environment for different reasons just thrived outside. And it was about, and then other children that maybe didn't have a lot of access to outdoors, maybe from their home situation, they might be living in apartments or, not having much access to outdoors, how different they were outdoors. So it was very much like, oh gosh, remember, how this child came into us in September, and look how they are now. And suddenly we began to see the dividends, that began to see the payout from this. And with each one of those, I suppose, we just added to it. So it was very kind of a natural change. It wasn't a sudden like policy change or a decision. Okay, look, we're going to make a call out today, and we're going to change how we do things tomorrow. It was a gradual change, and I suppose personally, I would have felt, because we're such an urban setting, I would have never viewed us as an outdoor setting. and I would have looked at outdoor settings with much jealousy and envy with their fabulous outdoor sessions. And I said, well, we don't have that, so we can't compete with that, I suppose. But rather than that kind of shutting us down and saying, well, okay, we can't provide that, so let's just not do anything. We were like, okay, what can we do with what we have, and make it as special as we can? And it's very small little things. There's nothing. There was very little. Not a huge amount of expense. Number one, like we didn't actually do got things like railway sleepers and red chalkboards, and so it can start off very, very gradual, and then you just keep layering on top of it and taking more and more steps into it. I think as well, for us, one of the big changes was even the educators themselves feeling more comfortable. Because again, at the beginning, it was a bit like, well, I'm not really an outdoorsy person, or I don't go outside a lot, and I don't really know what to do with the children outside. So I think as we as educators become kind of more confident that it wasn't really about doing things or providing things, it was just more about being out there and noticing what was out there in the weather. Was it windy? Was it rainy? Is there a puddle? Is there a snail? Snails are big in our school, by the way. They're obsessed by snails. So it was really just about pairing it back to that. And then we, I suppose, said, okay, let's spend longer outside. Or when the children came in at 9, we'd close the gates outside and we'd say, okay, what would happen if we actually didn't start off inside? What happens if we start off outside today? And they come into the inside as opposed to going out to the outside. And I think that was actually probably the biggest change, was leaving children start their session outdoors. Some children never came in at all for the 3 hours, and some still don't. And some come in to get something and go back out again. And other children would still, just move in gradually. So it just equalized them, I suppose. It kind of made them both equal. So if anything, we're probably gone the other extreme now, whereas the outdoors is more valuable and the indoors is less valuable. So I really think it's just gone a complete full circle, but in a very organic, kind of natural way,
Did COVID have an impact?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that was that kind of took us from where we were headed and kind of just propelled us faster and quicker along that route, things like the grant and the reopening grant, being able to put in a covered area was of huge value to us, I think it was something we always spoke about. We should really have a covered area outside, because much as well as it's to say, look, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. When you're standing in a paved urban area and the rain is belting down on top of you and you don't have shelter from things like trees or anything natural like that, it's probably not very pleasant. So having that extra affordance of that extra shelter, and it's like a little transitionary space because it exists between indoors and outdoors. So kind of, I suppose it's knitted them together, where so there, it's not like I'm inside and now I'm outside. You can be inside and then half inside, half outside, and then outside, and vice versa, So it's a really nice space, and it's not a huge area. It's like along the side of the building, but it's definitely something we're looking at, maybe even expanding again next year, because it's been such a great space for us.
And the other advantage of those transition areas is it gives shelter from, the worst of the elements, in terms of giving shade if it is very hot as well.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
it can be.
We're looking forward to those days, though.
Yes, absolutely. We all do. Okay, so what experiences do children have in you've mentioned some of them, but can you maybe take us through? You kind of said about the area, the paved area, and then the newer area to the back. So what experiences can children have in various outdoor areas that you have?
So like I said, we don't really have any permanent solid structures. We have a lot of things that we add and take away from the environment. We have a big storage shed, and the children can access anything that's in that shed at all times. So there's a sandpit and all your digging materials, your garden materials, your footballs, your hoops, all of that kind of stuff that you kind of like be familiar with. But we also have things like one of the actually a great way of bringing things outside or from inside back out is things like we buy big outdoor mats, so you can get them in most kind of home stores around the place now. So or IKEA, I shouldn't be pushing, whatever, but you can buy them in a lot of stores like this, and they're great for laying out flat on the floor, and even just bringing things like Lego or magnet tiles outside. So a lot of kind of the construction work the children like to spread out over on a wide area. So they have, if it's a damp day, you can still kind of do that. Heights are a big one with us this year. So we invested in hollow blocks, which are kind of a big wooden robust block. We store them outside, and the children take them out every day. So initially we thought they were being very risky when they were putting 3 blocks on top of each other and jumping from that. Now we have them jumping from much higher heights because they actually construct these obstacle courses. We began by doing it. First of all, we'd lay out the blocks and planks so that they could have a little obstacle course. But now the children actually come out and they build their own, they design their own, they plan it. They're bringing things in like the benches that we would use for sitting. They're bringing the benches over to add an extra layer of height so that they can run around. We noticed that they really wanted to jump and kind of launch themselves off things. So we were like, okay, how can we do this? So we got some gym mats, so they call them their crash mats. So sounds quite risky and dangerous, but it was just giving them a way to have that feeling of kind of trajectory and jumping off a height and down onto something lower. And so we can really see kind of the ability of children changing in that. So the children that come into us in September are, quite cautious. They might hold your hand when they're walking over the blocks, and you might need to hold their 2 hands when they jump. But it's just like it's the stages of development, and within weeks they're walking so much more confidently on these, and they're balancing. They're taking a little bit more, so they're more confident in what they can do themselves, without us leading them, I suppose. So I think that's the beauty about kind of things that you can add to, because you can the environment changes when the children's needs increase and their skills increase. So you can make it a little bit more challenging every single time. And also you can reduce the challenge for the child that's not quite at that stage. So they all feel that they've achieved something. They all feel like that sense of accomplishment.
And so it sounds like they set their own kind of levels of risk that they're comfortable with too, which is lovely.
Yeah. And I mean, I suppose we would have used things like bikes and trikes kind of like, that would have been our fail safe. Okay, somebody go put out the bikes, we need to get out, we need to run around. Whereas I don't think the bikes come out of the shed maybe once a week now, because they're actually so busy building things and using the like cable reels, things like tires for rolling. Sometimes I suppose, all right, I look at it and go, gosh, it doesn't look very pretty. This looks like a bit of a mess. But it's when you see the children using it, then you really see the benefits in that. Other things we use, like I said, now we use like tuck tables. We have our outdoor sinks, again, thanks to COVID grants. We have outdoor sinks, so the children now have access to water outdoors, whereas before we had one outdoor tap, which when you turned it on just soaked the whole place. Whereas now they have sinks, so they can go fill water for like measuring or making potions or food coloring, and but they do that themselves now. So I think yesterday I spent 3 hours with about 6 children, and they literally just went back and forth to the sink, filling up different color water, little tubes, using eyedroppers, watering the plants. But it's their place now. It's not my place to say, oh, I'll get you water. And before I used to be a case of them trailing through the school with their watering cans and water all the way down the hallway. So it's much freer for them now. So things like that. Cubbies, dens, like using things like parachutes, fabric, and just pegs. We bought lots of these like really sturdy pegs, and we can just clip them up around the area onto trees and onto hedges or gates, and they make little cozy areas to sit inside and bring in their books and bring in their pillows, and so that's another thing that they absolutely love. Yeah, we got a wheelie bin little crate to put the wheelie bins into, but that was taken back by the children. Now they go into it, they sit in it, they open the shed, they go in, they close the roof, and this is something they absolutely love. Again, somewhere dark and somewhere that we don't go into, that's their place, so so lots of different things. Really, it's very hard to kind of narrow it down to one thing. I suppose we do all the regular things like planting. We're growing peas at the moment and carrots, and so again, it just changes so much.
Do you still have the piece at the back with the flowing water and the different levels?
Yeah. And it's funny because again, I suppose how we envisaged what that piece of that structure was something that they could roll water down and water would gather at the end, and they would like leave leaves fall down it and the boats fall down it. But actually they use it quite a lot now at the moment as part of their kind of, they're all tired of it now, but they use it quite a lot with planks, and they build up onto it so that they can use it to walk on and climb across. So it changes as well, you know. It's a very different for this group of children this year who are very upset by that construction and building and climbing. It's got a very different feel than it might have maybe for a group next year. So
it turned into a very versatile piece of equipment, whereas you would at the start, what's that, 9-10 years ago, I suppose, you put that in?
Yeah. So it's not used in the way we had imagined, but they're using it in a different way. They love to run down it. They love to slide down it, their bodies. It's very different to what we thought it was going to be. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So how do you think children learn and develop through these experiences, Lee? What are the benefits to the children of all those experiences that you've mentioned?
I suppose the one thing that I see overall is confidence, and it's a kind of a belief that they have in themselves. It's them trying things that they haven't tried before. I think the indoor environment very much lends itself trying to things that they're already maybe aware of from their own homes, moving a tray from a tray to a table, lifting a chair, rolling a mat, taking things off shelves. That's all things that they can do at home. And I think the beauty about the outdoors is it's things that they haven't come across before. It's things maybe that they haven't been exposed to. Some children have, they have very outdoor lives as well at home, but a lot of children, I suppose, maybe don't have that. So it's kind of giving them a challenge that they haven't come across before, first of all, and then the opportunity and the time to perfect that. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's not like a child comes in on a Monday and by Friday they can climb over this or build this, so it's a gradual thing. Some children go very, very quickly through the kind of different stages, but you can see other children going through that physical development stage. Those big body movements, you can see them becoming stronger, steadier, all of that. But definitely, I think for me, it's the confidence. It's knowing that they can try something, fail, try again, fail, try again, and then succeed. There's a few scraped knees in that. There's bumps here and there, but it's very quick. You can really see how quickly they learn. Well, I actually bumped my knee, so I need to do something different the next time. And I think if we take that opportunity away from children too soon, because we're trying to, I suppose, in our minds, protect them and keep them safe from everything, they don't learn that until they're much older then. So they will still fall or they will still find something that's tricky or challenging. But because they've never had the opportunity to try it out in a kind of a safe environment, that's, obviously we're very, we're adjusting the environment to make sure that there's a risk assessment and it's, it's an appropriate risk for that child. But I suppose that's, for me, the biggest thing is just seeing how confident and how able the children have become, in the space of the time that they're with us is, for me, I think is the biggest part of being outside.
It strikes me as well, listening to you, that there's that bit of, kind of teamwork, that even at home, if they had all the materials that you have, there may be, one or two other children probably of different ages at home with them, but that, that kind of teamwork of being able to do these, construct these challenges and obstacle courses and co-construct the experiences. It's that kind of collaboration with peers. There's probably huge learning in that too, isn't there?
Oh, completely. I mean, I think the cooperative play and kind of that social play, the communication between the children is really evident. So I think even just in terms of language and the development of, you need to hold this now so I can, and those kind of, having to actually work it out and kind of hypothesize, okay, what if we do this? What if, we hear that a lot, like we hear, what if and you do this and I'll try that? And, so there's a lot of this kind of dialogue between children when they're trying to achieve something. Yesterday we have a little girl who just started with us just recently, actually since Easter. And she was watching the older children, they were doing something and she wanted to do it two. So two of them took her by the hand and off they went. And those are children that are finishing up with us this year. So they're finishing up their second year. And this little girl is about to start her first year. So she was just in with us to have a trial. And you could really see how they were willing to bring her along with them, and how eager she was to go with them, you know. And there was no adults involved in that. There was no, well, you must bring Mary too, or you must, you know. It just happened because they are so used to doing that themselves now between themselves that it was very natural for them to include her as well. And they recognized, I think as well, without even being said, they recognized that maybe she wasn't as able as them. So they were able to see that she needed that little bit more help, and they took her by the hand and they brought her off, and you know, so we're, you know, it really kind of removes, even though we're collaborating with them, they're much more collaborating between themselves, you know, and it's great to see that, yeah.
And the beauty of mixed ages, and
that
she'll carry that forward to September. That
exactly.
You know, she'll have that little bit of. You know, well, they do that here, that
exactly.
the other children starting in September won't have had access to, and it'll build on it. You know, you make it sound very kind of seamless over the 20 years, and you know, that it's all been wonderful. But you know, life is life. I suppose there were some challenges in it. Can you know, take us through maybe what some of those might have been and how you countered them?
Yeah, I think initially, I think the challenges were maybe with our perceptions of outdoors, and with trying to, I suppose, encourage the educators to be more confident. And there was probably days where they were like, "Oh, do I have to participate? It's really, you know." But I think on the whole, I wouldn't say that it's been seems, because it's been a long time. Like it has been a long time. And like I said, I suppose I feel now that I can advocate for particularly urban garden or urban settings who have gardens in accessing that. And that, I suppose, there was definitely a sense of, okay, like I spoke about being envious of like outdoor services, but for me, a kind of a disconnect between what I felt I could offer, and what I was seeing that was out there. And I suppose with the, you know, the advent of kind of social media, you were more aware of what other services had and were able to provide, and kind of feeling maybe discouraged and saying, okay, well, look, I don't have that, or I'll never have that. And so what's the use in kind of, you know, so you kind of have to accept that, I suppose, first of all, and accept, okay, well, look, you know, we're a very different service. We would have viewed ourselves as indoor. Like if someone had said to me, what are you? Or I would have said, oh, I'm an indoor sessional service, up to maybe 5-10 years ago. And then we'd be started to use in the last maybe 3 to 5 years, probably started to use the word like seamless. So that we had that, you know, seamless indoor, outdoor. And it was actually at the Early Childhood Ireland Outdoor Conference that I saw the word blended. And I went, blended, that's what I am. And it was like a little bit of a light bulb moment. I went, it's a blended service. Because I think if you're on one side of the fence, you can feel like you're looking over the side of the fence and saying, okay, all these are outdoor services, but that's not me. And it's hard to identify then and to kind of have goals for that. Whereas I think the blended is a really lovely way of describing it, because you're blending, you know, and I spoke about, I suppose, the value of the outdoor area has kind of gradually increased. And it's come from experiences, and it's coming from, you know, just educating ourselves, like looking at what's out there. I mean, I follow so many amazing services, both in Ireland and in the States and in the UK and in Scotland, that use the outdoors area, but that aren't necessarily like a forest school, you know, because I suppose if I look at something like forest school, like, oh my God, they're lighting fires, and they've got camps and tents, and they're going through rivers. So that can feel like, okay, I can't do that. So I'm really been looking at services that are similar to mine, but maybe doing a little bit more. So, and I think for me, I want to be that service for maybe a service who isn't quite there yet, maybe in terms of, okay, they're not quite confident, and, you know, maybe the balance between indoors and outdoors is still a little skewed. That, like, okay, well, how can I increase more of my outdoor time in a way that suits me and is comfortable for me and comfortable for the children that I care for? And I think that's something, I think that's something for me that's kind of very important right now.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of mentioned that you're a very different kind of service, and yes, you're different to the kind of forest school kind of, or the people who have 3 acres. But, you know, your space, having been there, isn't that different to an awful lot of services. What's different is the way you've drawn on, you know, what the places that have the huge areas can do, and you've adapted that to give children as close as possible to those experiences. And that kind of goes back to what I said at the start, that what really matters isn't so much the size. You know, years ago, I remember being in a setting, and it was very clear from talking to the staff. Now, you know, I'm going back a long time, that kind of from October to April, the outdoor space wasn't used. And they had a beautiful outdoor space, but it just wasn't used that much. So it's using it and giving children as broad a range of experiences in that space is what really matters.
And I think the more you use it as well, the more comfortable you become. So, you know, it's okay to do it kind of in a gradual way. And then, you know, rather than, just, like I said, just deciding one day, okay, we're going to be outside now. And I think something like starting the children outside and moving in, like that was a really easy thing to do. Like, you know, okay, we're pop your bag in, we're going to go straight out into the garden, you know, or leaving the bags outside. We had hooks outside, and we're like, okay, just leave your bag and your coat here in our covered area, and you know, and just you know, let's not go inside, you know, or going home from inside. So rather than parents coming to the door of the school, having parents come in, we were lucky we have a second gate, so parents can come in and see the children outside and collect them from outside. And that kind of helps parents' perceptions as well of, you know, this is why they're going home very muddy today, but this is what we've been doing, you know, or this is why they're on their third change clothes because they got wet again, or, you know, whatever it was, you know.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that. I mean, in terms of the challenges, did, you know, parental beliefs around maybe children getting sick if they're outside, or getting sick if they're wet or whatever, you know, did you have
yeah, absolutely. Every year, I mean, even this year now, you know, we have families who kind of don't quite understand and maybe feel that, okay, look, I need my child to be dry and warm and inside today, and you know, they had maybe a sniffly nose or whatever. And so we really, I suppose, just kind of gone through the motions and explained to them that, you know, while trying to, I suppose, you know, respect their perspective and their wishes, that really this is what our service is about, and kind of show them, you know, and say, of course, if your child appears cold or uncomfortable or unhappy outdoors, of course we'll bring them inside, you know, and we'll do something inside for a little while, but that, like, how much their children enjoy being outside. And we have a family Facebook page that we use, and we put so many photos up on that. Like, I mean, like we sometimes we just run a video and take some shots of the children just at play, and then just show like a 2-minute video. So that's just a very broad overall picture of what the children are doing, and you can hear the sounds, you can hear the children engage, you can hear the laughter, you can hear the children's voices. And I think then most, like, they really do come around. I do think there's for lots of different reasons. Parents, some it's about clothes being clean and, you know, not wanting to be dirty, and others it is about illness or sickness. So it's about trying to understand where they're coming from, and then just keep reassuring them. Okay, but look how happy they are. Look what they're doing. Look how confident your child is now. And yeah, just sticking with it. Sometimes turning a bit of a blind ear, and you know, just saying, let's just try it and see what happens, you know. And in most cases, I mean, I don't think we've ever had a parent that was that unhappy that, you know, they resisted it that much. You know, we've been lucky, really. Our parents have been very much engaged and involved with us. You know, we've all the wellies and the rain gear in, and, you know, so yeah, I think we've been quite lucky that way.
I think there's a bit about making it clear from the start that you spend a lot of time outside. Absolutely. And I suppose the beauty of the blended then is that children have the choice to go in, that they're adults inside, and that it's led by the children.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there are challenges in that as well, in that kind of in having both indoor and outdoor in operation at the same time. So you as a team, so like, I'm very, very lucky. My educators are very communicative between each other. So if I'm in a room and there's one other educator with me and we've 22 children, and some of mine are starting to move outdoors, I'm just going to go, okay, well, I'm going to head out with this group, and you're working away in there. And we do a lot of communication through windows, a lot of sign language. Do you want help, or do you need me to come outside? Definitely, I think that the staff ratio is really important. I suppose we have additional people due to AIM, and we have additional people just because I suppose we've an additional person in myself, I suppose, I should be in the office a lot more. I am in the rooms and on the garden outside a lot. But I suppose that gives us that little bit of flexibility. So I suppose what we say is, look, if we have 3 areas open, we need 4 people because we need a staff member in each one, and we need somebody moving between those, helping children transition between the areas. If we have, if we only had 2 staff, like it would obviously be different, so it really does mean that you need 1 more team member, let's say, than areas you have open, so I think for everyone that will look different, though. I think that's something that each service, based on how they're set up, will look differently at,
Lee, thank you so much. There's so much inspiration and ideas, and and very practical, very doable. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. In our next episode, we'll be talking to somebody who has that very big area, and how they can afford children opportunities to learn and develop outside. And we'll be also coming back to some of the policy aspects. So thank you very much for listening to this episode of Early Childhood Ireland's podcast, which is proudly supported by Erica's. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and spread the word to your friends and colleagues, and stay tuned for our next episode.